But from an aspirational standpoint, how do you find a path? You shoot for the stars. You pick a point, and that's where you go. And that's very much how we are approaching it.
So our guest today will be of very special interest to all of you who are doing UCFB business courses. She's a local-ish. She comes from about 5-6 hours drive down the road, but has lived in the city of Atlanta for the last decade. She's made a huge impact in the 3 full seasons of Atlanta United's operating in the MLS, not least of which masterminding the breaking of the MLS attendance record. We couldn't be happier to have with us today VP Business Operations for Atlanta United, who is Catie Griggs. And here she comes.
Hello, good afternoon.
There she is. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Doing well. Welcome to my guest bedroom.
I'm impressed. If I'm ever in the area and I'm stuck for a hotel room, I know where to come and stay.
Lovely. We've got a nice large bed. It's great.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. Do you know what? I kind of wanted to class you as a semi-local, having moved into the area, because just as a first sort of learning experience for our students, having been in the community for the last decade and then got the job, Catie, that's a delicate line to walk, isn't it? Because sometimes we have to be unemotional about the professional decisions we're making, and that can be difficult if our neighbors, our friends are in our ear saying, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Oh my goodness.
No, I think thankfully probably Carlos has to deal with a lot more of that, and what we would call from the US the Monday morning quarterbacking of everyone being confident they can do his job better than he can. On the business side, thankfully we have a little bit more anonymity. But that being said, it's a really cool experience for me. I joined about halfway through our first season. So the team had started playing. It was right before we moved into Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But it means I do have the somewhat unique perspective of someone who was at the first match ever as a fan. So had that fan experience for that very first match the club ever had, watched the launch of the club I've been in the industry for a long time, but from an outsider's eye, and then had the opportunity to come in still very, very early and actually run it from the inside. So it's been a very interesting balance for me, to your point, in terms of seeing it as an Atlantan who had no affiliation with the club, and then having the opportunity to step in and really try to grow it.
And the buzz that you get on match day, is that'll be very different to the supporter experience then, presumably, because presumably your markers and your drivers are all things like bottoms on seats and all that kind of stuff?
Yes and no. So, I mean, it's interesting because when you look at the way that we view our objectives, right? So our KPIs, our key performance indicators as a club, I think, yes, butts and seats matter, right? That is one of the key drivers of our economic success, which, needless to say, our owner is very interested in. However, I think our owner, and I think it probably aligns with what Scott and Carlos said as well, as an organization, we are very, very focused on that fan experience and the consumer experience and what is our role in our community. And on the one hand, we do it because it's frankly the right thing to do. On the other hand, what I can tell you is from a business perspective, it's key to our success, because if you're looking at every aspect of the experience through how do I make this as positive, as comfortable, as welcoming as possible for anyone who steps foot into our building, they're much more likely to come back. And it does provide you with some insulation in terms of what's happening on the pitch. Needless to say, a winning team, you're going to have more fans attending than if the team's having a rough go of it. And we've been very fortunate, courtesy of what Carlos and his team have done, to have a team that wins more often than not. But that being said, it does provide you with some insulation where even if we're going through a bit of a rough patch, our fans stick with us because it's such a positive experience when they're in our building.
And have your goalposts moved because of this successful first few seasons, or are you still very much on course to the original master plan?
No, it's interesting. I mean, I think we have been very pleasantly surprised by the degree of success we've had. I will tell you, sort of taking a step back to prior to joining the club, Atlanta historically has been known as a tough sports market for a few reasons. So college football, so university American football is very, very dominant here. The Falcons, obviously with whom we share a venue, are very dominant. But fans have a bad reputation for, if a team is winning, they're there. If a team is not winning, they're not. And there's been some conversation about, are fans truly vested in the team? And one of the things that's unique about the city of Atlanta and the area around it is it has grown rapidly since the Olympics in 1996. So going way back in time, if you look over the last, call it 25 years or so, the city's exploded from a growth standpoint. And there are a lot of people like me who moved here from somewhere else relatively later, either for university or after university or even later in their careers, and have since made this their home. But one of the dynamics of that is when you look at established leagues like Major League Baseball or the NFL, you move here from Chicago, you may be an American football and NFL Chicago Bears fan, or you might be a Cubs fan. And that doesn't mean you don't like the Falcons or don't like the Braves, but it means that when the Chicago Bears come to play the Atlanta Falcons, you're not wearing your Atlanta Falcons jersey anymore. You're wearing your Bears jersey. And I think one of the things that's been very interesting and that we frankly didn't expect is, given the relatively short history of sort of popularity of Major League Soccer here in the United States, a lot of those people who have moved to Atlanta did not move with existing soccer affiliations. So as a result, we've really been able to capture a very large base of Atlanta where we are their team and we're their first team in soccer. Now, again, they may still be a Chicago Bears fan or a Cubs fan or what have you, but it's truly worked to our advantage that we've had such a young, dynamic, and growing city where we're not competing against the club that you've rooted for since you were a child, and your father rooted for since he was a child, and your grandfather before that.
So that is actually effectively a blank sheet of paper. And I know, reading a couple of your existing interviews, you talked about the joy you get out of growing businesses, but a blank sheet of paper as well can also be a pressure, can't it? Because we therefore have to set the markers and the strategy on it to know where to grow into.
Well, I think it's courtesy of having, Arthur Blank as our owner, who is an entrepreneur at heart. For anyone who is not familiar with him, he founded Home Depot, grew it into the largest retailer in the world at one point. Having someone like Darren Eales coming over with, vast amount of soccer knowledge. He's also just a very, very smart human being. Expectations were high. So it wasn't that we came in with low expectations, but I will say that we came in with expectations that are lower than where we are now. And you reset the bar, right? If we have averaged over the last couple of seasons somewhere between 52 and 53,000 fans per season, which I believe has put us in the top 15 clubs globally from an attendance standpoint.
Wow.
That is not something we ever expected, frankly, especially not within our first 3 seasons. And so for us now, it's a matter of, okay, we've had tremendous success out of the gate. That doesn't mean that we can go back to the expectations that we had at the beginning. There's clearly an opportunity here. How do we continue to do more, to do better, to think, to innovate, and ultimately to help as Major League Soccer raises sort of its profile globally in the world of football? How do we make sure that as a club, we're actually at the top of that conversation and we become that American club of choice, not just in Atlanta, not just in the state of Georgia or the United States, but really much more internationally. So for us, it's not going in and saying tomorrow we're challenging Manchester United. I think we realize we have a ways to go. But from an aspirational standpoint, how do you find a path? You shoot for the stars, you pick a point, and that's where you go. And that's very much how we are approaching it.